Hey there, welcome back to the Difference Maker Revolution podcast. And this week we have the return of Stefano and the return of Jono, and Jeanine is ever present, omnipresent almost. And I believe this week we're going to be talking about how you should curl up into a ball in a corner and cry your eyes out when your week falls apart. Because that's exactly what Jeanine did this week, I believe.
Yeah, totally. I got my security blanket and, my little emotional support Pooh Bear and just curled up in a corner.
I can't imagine that, Jeanine. We had this discussion a while ago. So, Jeanine, it's we had this conversation a few months ago because you mentioned that one of your weeks fell over, and it sounds like maybe you've implemented some of the stuff we talked about. So what happened this week? Tell me.
Yeah, so, it's interesting. We and I know it happens to everyone, but it happens to us frequently. We photograph babies, right? So it'll happen in a morning where a mom will call us and be like, my baby just woke up with 102 fever. We have to reschedule. Or they'll call us, on a Monday and say, oh, baby's not feeling good. I don't, runny nose, allergies. We don't want to do this session this week. Can we reschedule to next week? We get, different reasons why especially if they're in daycare, good Lord Almighty, they always seem to be catching some sort of bug, illness, or whatever. But it runs in waves, right? Like there'll be certain seasons, and I think during allergy season or cold and flu season where it happens more often than not. Or when the weather is really beautiful outside and, in my mind, I think they're actually going to the beach. No one's actually sick, but, whatever the case, or somebody invited them to go to Disney that day, whatever the case may be, they want to reschedule, and so.
And there's another thing too, Jeanine. It seems to be like when we have a bad booking time or, we're not on the ball with our discovery calls, suddenly everybody wants to reschedule too. So there's everything that you've said. I used to have a team of booking people, and it was amazing how a certain person's bookings were all rescheduling and the other person's bookings all were happy and eager to turn up. So, sometimes it can be a shift in what's happening in our life that's affecting our calls. And that also affects whether people are wanting to reschedule or not turn up.
Absolutely. And it's interesting you say that because we've noticed in our excitement sequence, the more all of our boxes get checked off and everything gets mailed and everything gets emailed and all the phone calls happen, the random reschedules don't happen. Clearly, we still get, baby woke up with 102 fever. But when I always ask, if someone's rescheduling, it's not an illness problem. I'm like, did everything happen? Did we make our phone calls? Did the emails go out? Did they get read? Did they get confirmed? Did we get, we sent an email that asked them for information. Did we get an email back? That's a big sign for us, right? Did we get the email response back from them? If we didn't, then I'm like, I think there's a reason why they're rescheduling or canceling, right? Usually for us, it's a reschedule, not a cancel, but we do occasionally have the cancels too.
But it's almost like our systems give people immunity to all the diseases that a lot of people seem to catch before a photo shoot.
Isn't it amazing?
I'm gonna have to stop both of you for a second because you just said that when you book someone in, you're emailing them, texting them, calling them multiple times after they booked in. What? Really? I thought you just booked them in and they showed up.
Oh yeah, it's magic, Jonathan.
Or they can book themselves in and they just show up. Like that has happened never. Right.
Yeah. No, there is work that needs to be done to keep your client excited. But that's a different podcast, Jonathan. Don't derail this one.
And it's important. All those steps are important.
Yeah, no, it is all important. I'm just teasing.
And keep the client excited. Very important. But you're right. That's a whole other bit of training and a whole other podcast. So what did you do? What actions did you take, Jeanine,
So a couple months ago when we had this conversation, it was just funny because you and I were talking. You're like, how's your week going? I'm like, oh, Lord Almighty. We had like 5 people reschedule, and I'm working with my studio coordinator to get these times rebooked. And you had asked me, well, what are you doing? And so pre-Steve, the pre-Steve conversation, things that we would do, it was different. And I'll be honest, when it was just me photographing, honestly, because we tend to overbook me, if someone rescheduled, it was like, I have time to work. And I would actually not reschedule anything, because that's when I would actually find time to get other work done, make phone calls, do some marketing, I think different things that I needed to do. Now that I have another photographer, I am paying that person to be photographing, whether they're photographing or not. And so it highlighted something like a hole in our system.
But you also know you should be paying yourself.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. Like in the past, I should have not been celebrating someone canceling as time to work. I should have been upset about it. So it highlighted a hole in our system last year when I took on another photographer. I'm like, well, holy cannoli, right? I need to, there you go, Jonathan. There's another word to use. Holy cannoli. I needed to find a way to make her make money when she's here, even if somebody reschedules. So we started coming up with different ideas. We always have a waiting list, especially for our events, right? So our events and our themes, there's a waiting list. And so Betsy would get on the phone and start calling people on the waiting list. Or if we booked someone on a weekday who really wanted a Saturday, and it's a Saturday session that rescheduled, she would call them like, hey, great news for you. Not such great news for the baby who got sick. But if you would like to move to Saturday, you certainly can. So we would have a list of people who, if a date opened up, they would want it.
Sometimes people request a certain day and it's already booked out. And so you've got to book them sometime in the future. So our we used to call it a standby list. Our standby list was, when people requested a certain day, but they had to wait 2, 3, 4 weeks sometimes, we would make note of that. So it sounds very similar to what you were doing. And I think we just need a list somewhere of people's initial wants when it came to booking or availability. So we would also make a note of their availability. So if we couldn't book them in for 3 or 4 weeks, we would say, look, if something does turn up, you booked on a Tuesday, would you want to be brought forward if something did come up? We'll book you in now, but if something else comes up, and at the booking stage, we would let them know that it's possible that they could be brought forward.
Yeah. And, and so we've been working on a way to systemize that better for Betsy. So that way, when those needs arise, it's easier for her to access. Right. So I think not only knowing you're going to do it, but having a good system in place to access it is really important. But then the only other thing that we really did was I would put them to use doing marketing and social media, right? So if we weren't able to reschedule the time, I was like, all right, Elizabeth, this is what I need you to do. You have an hour that you were supposed to be photographing. So I want you to photograph these products, make some reels, make some posts that we can do for social media within the next week, and come up with something fun that we can do to create content. And so that was really it. And then Steve was like, oh, Jeanine, have you thought about, and then this is where our conversation went. And I've been so excited about filming this podcast. I've been bugging the guys about it because this is something that can have a direct impact on your business today, tomorrow, and immediately. Because now this week, our capacity is 12 sessions a week. At the beginning of the week, we had 11 sessions scheduled, but we had 6 rescheduled. Like insanity, right? 6 people rescheduled. And so I'm like, Betsy, and they rescheduled for the following week or 2, but that doesn't help this week, So we deployed some of the ideas we're going to share with you guys now, and we're back up to 11. So I'm really excited about that. And so these strategies that Steve has floating around in his head, we've systemized it, and they're not floating in his head. They're systematically in there. I'm just, being funny. But as soon as Steve and I had that conversation, so now I hope as soon as you guys listen to this podcast, you sit down with, if it's you, yourself and you, or you and your team, and you figure out how to take these ideas and implement them immediately in your studio, it will transform your bottom line. How can it not?
So I feel I need to just clarify something there. So you said at the start of this week, you had 11 bookings for the week. It dropped down to 5.
Correct.
You implemented strategies, it's back up to 11.
Correct.
So you didn't go cry in the corner. You actually did something about it.
No, I did not go cry in the corner. We worked.
Look at you.
It's that W word again. Worked.
You worked. Right?
Well, it's not even work. It's not like we've got a pitchfork and a shovel in our hands.
Right.
Like,
And now I know.
really
We picked up
difficult.
the phone. Steve, we picked up the phone.
Imagine.
What a concept. All right. So let's give them some of these ideas, Steve.
Well, the first thing is to let Betsy know the critical times, those times that are critical now that she has to fill, because as she's making calls and when she's receiving calls, she now knows that, hey, these times are critical. And that used to happen in my studio. The people would just assume we were fully booked, not even look at the week, and be booking people 2-3 weeks in advance. And I think some people are okay saying, oh, well, that money will come in a couple of weeks anyway, but you need now what's happening this week, because what's going to happen in the following week. And then rather than doing the marketing, why not call next week's appointments that are booked in on the same day and the time slot that you need to be filled, and say, hey, guess what? Do the discovery call. We would normally really excite them on another discovery call and say, do you know what? We've had an opening this week. Why don't we do you this week? So if you're doing discovery call first and you excite them again, you tend to get more people saying, oh my God, yes, I'd love to come in this week. Let's do it. And so now you've got that extra week of buffer to fill up next week's, whereas you've only might have 2 or 3 days to fill that up. So calling next week's appointments and filling up this week's works too.
It does. And so we've added that to Betsy's list. She did that this week. We were only able to move one because for us with the first birthdays, it's funny. A lot of people want to do it on the child's birthday. Or the outfits haven't come in yet, right? So we have two things working against us. They've ordered from Etsy and the outfits haven't arrived, or they really wanted it on a specific date because it's their birthday. But that's okay because we have other sessions too, right? It's not just first birthdays. So
the other sessions are likely to move. Or if you're a boudoir photographer,
yep,
usually they're happy to move too.
Yep. And so we did have one of those other types of sessions. It was a toddler session. So that session was able to move to this week. And she was excited about it because we were able to actually get her into a better nap time.
Perfect. Perfect. And then, of course, the standby list, implementing the standby list, like having that standby list and knowing when people are available and calling people that are likely to want that spot because they asked for it in the first place.
Yes, that's a good one too. But can I talk about now my favorite one that we never thought about that you gave me as an idea?
Go.
So when we do our initial phone call to our potential clients from the lead forms that we get in, there are several that will end up where they don't book with us right away. They need to think about it. They need to talk to a partner, or something in the universe is preventing them from booking at that moment. So Steve was like, Jeanine, he's like, you have this time. It's already been paid for by another client. It's the perfect opportunity to call everyone that hasn't been able to get off the fence yet on booking a session and offering it to them and telling them that session has already been paid and you'd love to invite them in and there is no cost, no upfront session fee in order to come in for that time. And that blew my mind. I don't know how I never thought of it, honestly, because it's such a great idea. I should have had it, but I didn't. And you said it and it just this light bulb went off in my head. I'm like, holy cannoli. I have to don't make me laugh. I have to get this implemented. It's the number 3 in Betsy's list of things to do now. Number 3. So if we can't fill by moving people, if we can't fill from the standby list, number 3, she goes to that other list and the people that are in our pipeline that haven't booked yet. And she calls them and she's like, guess what? Someone else having a schedule has opened up this time. If you can come in Saturday at 10 a.m., we will waive the $75 for your cake and balloons. Because it's already been paid for.
Okay, so I've got to ask this because I know the resistance I get when I suggest this to people is that, oh, people that don't pay for a session fee won't spend money or they won't show. So what's happened? Like when they do come in, what's been the results?
They are one, I think they're extremely appreciative of the fact that we gave that offer to them, right? We didn't have to. We could have just told them, hey, guess what? This is time open. Now still give us your $75. And you know me and my philosophy on session fees. If you think you're going to retire off your session fees, like you got another thing coming to you, right? Like session fees is never part of what we consider in taking in money. It's our marketing. It's our ways that we can give offers. It's how we can give things for free to get people to move. And so I never consider a session fee as what's going to make someone commit. So I think it's my mindset. So for us, when we call someone and say, guess what, we can waive this for you. They're like, oh my God, that's amazing. Are you serious? Yes, book us in. Like, and they're so excited. It's something so small, you know? And here's the thing. And what's so funny is people love little tokens of, what's the word I'm looking for? They love little things like that. People love things for free, you know? And it doesn't mean they're not going to spend more with you later. Our sessions that we have done this for now in the past 2 months since we've had this conversation, they've come in, they're excited, they're grateful that we offered this to them, and they spend just the same, if not maybe a little higher. I've never had someone spend below our average that has come in from that.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think you got to make them feel special too when you call. You've got to, like when I was calling, I would say to them, look, we've had this cancellation and this booking's been paid for. And I know that we talked the other day and you were the first person I thought of because of the conversation, or you've got to remind them of something about those conversations. So I think, yes, they want it, but the fact that you thought of them in front of it before anybody else really excites them.
Yes. You know, it's so interesting, Steve, you said that, because so much of what we do is how we make people feel. You know, whether it be on the phone when we're having conversations or when they're in front of us, in front of our cameras, so much is how we make them feel and how they relate back to us because of how we make them feel. And so if we make them feel special, they feel great. You know, it's an amazing reciprocal effect that happens. And so this fear that a photographer might have that, oh, well, if I give them that, they're not going to show up. It's crazy talk. Like, why wouldn't they? You've just given them this gift. You've thought of them first. It's going to be the opposite.
But it's that extra little sweetener that helps them decide to cross that line, that you've removed that barrier, you've added the sweetener, you've thought of them, you've excited them. Why wouldn't they come in? And why wouldn't they spend? Like if they're a potential client before, you've got the option of doing nothing, really,
right,
or bringing somebody in that potentially can spend some money. And do they spend when they come in, Jeanine?
Yes. No, that's what I was saying. They do spend. They spend at our average or a little above. We haven't had one spend below.
That's funny because I read a post recently by someone in the industry, and they're talking about how if people aren't booking, it's because you're not communicating your higher prices your higher up prices early on, so they don't see you as being a luxury, and you come in, they're not booking for that reason. I'm like, oh my God.
Well, I think, just from you talking, you were telling me that, you know, a lot of these people are coming in for their first birthday. Why would you not, given that you have their birthdays, why could you not call up last year's people that came in that week and offer them a session for their second birthday?
Yes. And so that is another great idea. So we, now that we have the engine, and Jonathan knows this, that was my number one goal in the new year, was to create our 1 to 2 year booking pipeline. And so everybody goes in the pipeline once they've finished their first birthday, and it nurtures them over the next year to help with our 2 year bookings, right? And so they're getting text messages, phone calls, movie tickets, emails, and postcards between 1 year to 2 years to keep the communications open in a fun way, in a thoughtful way, in an appreciative way. And then as we're getting closer to the 2 year, in a more, you know, here's an offer for you, right? And so that is something that we do. That is something that we have on there too. So now that we're getting into that cycle of kids who are about to be 2 from that pipeline, we were able to call them and be like, hey, you know, we know Johnny's about to turn 2. And we love, you know, and we have that conversation. Have you thought about booking? We have this opening. And so, yes, that is definitely someone you can call Because if you know you're keeping track of these birthdays, which you should be keeping track of these birthdays if you're not, then you have that ability to make those phone calls.
No way. You're building long-term relationships with your clients and creating clients for life. Who would have thought?
Who would have thought?
I'm sorry. If I just have to go into sarcastic mode sometimes. I just get such pleasure from it. Obviously, I can't say it on the podcast. I'm just being...
Just say holy cannoli.
Sarcastic. I'm being a sarcastic git. That's okay. Have to add a bit of humor, right?
So, Jeanine, do you ever get clients coming in that bring their best friends in, or bring their mom? How do you say it? Moms? How do Americans say mum?
Mom.
Oh, mum. Bring their mums in. So the grandma's in, for instance. And we engage with them. We tend to show them around, and they're really excited. And they're always saying, oh, this is something that we should also do. You know, we should come back. We should come back with your father and do something. And so that was a separate list that we kept. And so they were like the secondary buyers list, where the best friends have come in. They've watched their friend go through this experience. They've told us that they want to have this experience too. Their friends have spent well, or sometimes the mums that are coming in, the grandmas, are paying.
Yeah, they're my favorite. I love grandmas who pay.
So could you ring up one of the grandmas who's come in previously and have a list of the grandmas who you could potentially keep on that standby list? So when your bookings do fall, you could potentially call up those secondary people, the best friends that have turned up but haven't had their own experience. Grandma who says that she needs to come in with her husband, it's really urgent, and have something with their grandchildren, or something just by themselves. Keep that list, and then we used to sort of rate them with a 1, 2, 3, and 3 being the one most likely to book and the one most likely to have the best experience. So we had the standby list, but we also had that other list where they've been to the studio, their best friend or their daughter has come in, and they've seen our product, they've seen the experience happening before their eyes, they've seen somebody else spend really well, and when we call them, they tend to get really excited, and they're already educated, they're already ready, and they know how much it's going to spend. Have you tried that one?
I have not. So talk to me about that. So how do you collect their information when they're in?
We normally would find out from them, if you did want to have one, let's get your information, and we'll get one of our team to call you. And for whatever reason, maybe that didn't happen. Sometimes they're on the list, and they were a little bit hesitant. So we would call the best friend, because we'd call the original client and say, right, do you know what? Your friend, she was so excited to come in. We just had a cancellation and that booking's paid for. Do you think she would love to come in? And often our client would make the call, convince her
you need to do this,
and
yes,
she would call. Yeah,
you need to do this.
And so it's coming.
It's a great chance. Yes.
So it's coming from another source, but because we're here to build long-term relationships, most of our clients want to support us, and so if they genuinely think that their best friend is going to have an amazing time, then why wouldn't they?
Why wouldn't they?
Ideally, we get their information on the day, because if they're saying, yes, we want to
right,
do this, we would always, there's that trust factor when you're with somebody. We haven't abandoned them at the front. We've taken care of them the whole time, treated them like a client.
Right. Yes.
Even though they weren't. And so it wasn't difficult to get their details.
No, I love that concept. And actually with the engine, it'd be so easy because you could create a tag for those potential clients. And then on a Monday, like when you're looking, you could run a report or a smart list of those tags and just start making your phone calls from there. That'd be super easy, Jono.
And on that, stop painting me as the engine expert. I'm not the techie.
You are.
Please don't.
You're the techiest out of all of us.
I just know a little bit more than the average Joe when it comes to tech, and that makes me dangerous, because then everyone believes I'm the tech person, but I'm far from it. I'm a marketer. Anyway, tech aside, I wanted to point out, because when you're talking about opportunities for more experiences, one of the biggest eye-opening things for me last week when we were at Empower at the workshop was we were going through some of the answers that clients had filled out on their form. And I think that when you look at what clients are telling you about their relationships and about what's important, and you figure out what are the compelling questions you need to ask to dive into what's important to your clients, you begin to have like these light bulb moments. It's like you might be having a conversation or discovery call with a potential client and you realize, oh my God, dad and their dog Little Feet have this incredible connection and relationship. Well, we need to explore that because that's one collection, wall art that, I can sell. That's an opportunity. And you have to have your mind open to opportunities. And you like ask another compelling question about mom's relationship and another compelling question about whatever it might be. And the better questions you ask and the more you discover what's important to your clients, you're creating opportunities for yourself because you begin to realize, oh my God, that's a collection, that's a collection, that's a collection. And then all of these are going into a 3XM folio box. And you just kind of, it's mind blowing when you open your mind and think about, okay, what are the opportunities? And not the opportunities for selling stuff, but the opportunities for discovering what's important to a client. And when you discover what's important, then you can link it to what they will want to buy. Did I get that right, Steve?
Yeah, that was great.
That was great, Jonathan. Which is why like the grandmas coming in is so amazing because it's such an easy conversation to have. And if you're not having them with the grandmas when they come in or the grandpas when they come in, many times we try and get them in the session right away. Like, because I have this sense of urgency with grandparents in my heart. And it might come from the fact that I lost mine very young in life, And so for me, anytime you can get portraits made with a grandparent, it's so special. And something to be cherished for that child. But a lot of times, grandparents, they're like, oh no, I'm not ready to be in a portrait today. Look at my hair, look at my this, And so it's a great opportunity. And we always talk about it. Like, oh, well, we need to come in and celebrate your relationship with your grandchildren. And it's about them. They're going to want these portraits of you as they grow older. And they want portraits with it, and we talk about that relationship. You have such a special, look at you're here. And I always ask, do you live here? Are you traveling? Because if you don't live here, we need to do this now. If you do live here, let's schedule it. And we always talk about the scheduling to come in and do a generational portrait because to me, there's nothing more important. You got to get those grandparents when you have the opportunity. We happen to live in God's waiting room in Florida. That's what we call it. So a lot of grandparents happen to live here. With their children, with their grandkids, but many times they do travel in. They travel in. I don't even give them the option, and it's really funny. I'm like, you know what? Your grandkids don't care what you look like today. They want a portrait with you, and we're going to create that for you. And we're going to capture that memory so that when you go back to New York or you go back to California or you go back, if they live in another country, this will have been done, and your grandchildren will be so excited that they have these portraits with you. And so it's funny. I flip it. I'm like, it's not about you. It's about them.
Do you know what? You've just triggered my memory. Like I was in the studio about a year ago and it almost felt like every grandparent was dropping off their kids with the baby to have their photos done. And they were sitting in the car park the whole time. And so I'm like, why is there somebody in the car park? And she goes, oh, that's my mum. She's waiting for us. I'm like, oh my God, we should invite her in. And so then we invite her in and, they just want to talk and they want to, be involved. And then I'm a little bit sneaky. I'll say, do you know what? We really need you in the studio because the baby's a little unsettled. And apparently you are the baby whisperer. So would you come in and just hold the baby for us and just calm her down so we can get some amazing shots of her? And we just want her to get used to the lights. So we put her in front of the lights. She was, so as you're getting, because it seemed to be the lights that sort of tend to sort of upset her. So if you just can calm her down. And they were so grateful at the end because they wouldn't have book this for themselves, and they wouldn't have done that for themselves. And, maybe on a day that you've had not all your clients turn up, you can take the extra time to do these extra little things and make somebody's day, make grandma's day, see the opportunity in front of you. We've sold, an extra, 1 or 2 collections to so many clients. And that's equivalent to $2,000 or $3,000, extra, because we took the time, and grandma was the baby whisperer. And often they are.
They often are. Yes. Because the grandmas do the spoiling. The grandmas have no stress. The grandmas don't have any stress with the babies, and babies don't pick up on stress. And so they are very relaxed with their grandparents very often. All right. So I know we're coming up on our time mark here, because Steve and I could talk about this legit forever, but I want to summarize. So I'll do a quick one, and then I know Steve will have more to say. Really,
and we should record a course on this, Jeanine.
We should record a course on this. I think
because there's so much more you can do.
There's so much more. It's vital, and I think this is something that will have a direct impact on a studio, like the day they listen to this podcast, and then the day they listen to the course and implement. So we definitely need to record. Jono, make a note, Jono. We need a course on this. But
Janine's writing a course.
No, Steve is writing a course. I'll just come along for the ride. So it is I'm telling you, when you come in on Monday and you look at your week, changing your mindset on how you're going to handle that week. And we've talked so much about being proactive with your marketing, but this is a matter of being proactive with your week as well. And you just don't let the week take over. You take over the week.
Yeah, Jeanine, we've walked in, and the day, yesterday we had a fully booked calendar for the day, and today we walked in and there's nobody coming. And what you've just said, that mindset, we can still create some magic on that day.
Yes. And, I'm so tired of seeing people complain in online groups. Sometimes I just need a break from Facebook, but where, this has been a terrible week. Everybody canceled. I don't know what to do. And it's just it's the wrong mindset. If you don't know what to do, you're not in control. And I might be a control freak, but it works, and so you need to take control. And
it's because you haven't recorded the course yet.
Right. It's because we haven't recorded the course. Once we record that course, I don't want to see any more posts about people's weeks falling apart and they don't know what to do.
And blaming the client.
Posts. Yes.
All right. So we're going to wrap up this podcast. So I'm going to go to Jeanine first, then I'm going to go to Steve. So Jeanine, 3 things from this podcast. What are they that we need to be aware of?
Didn't I just say it? Mindset. You need to have the right mindset to make sure that you are always controlling your calendar. You need to not blame your client. This is if people are canceling and rescheduling, there's something either that you have missed or you need to do. And then 3, when it does happen, you need to have a list. You need to have it. You can't just wonder at 8:30 in the morning, what am I going to do? You need to have it already prepared out, a list of, and this is what we have. It's this is all the ideas and here's their ranking. You're going to do this first, then this, and you go down the list until you get your calendar back up to being booked.
Okay. So 1, mindset, 2, taking responsibility, and 3, having a list to get your bookings back up. Steve, 3 things.
Look for opportunities. There's opportunities everywhere. I mentioned on one of the Zooms that we had a client who was complaining that they had nobody in, and I told them to go to the park with their kids and just talk to somebody. And there was somebody who posted in the group they were talking to somebody in the park, and they got a booking. And they would bring people back to the studio from the park. There's opportunities everywhere. Grandmas are there. So look for opportunities. Your energy. Check your energy. Because what seems to happen is when this happens, everyone's energy goes down. And as an owner, we need to lift everybody's energy up. And it's amazing what can happen when everybody's positive and everybody's excited and everybody's aware of those critical times that we have to fill. Suddenly, these bookings come from nowhere because we're aware of it. So making people aware and not having one list, having multiple lists, right? Not just your standby list, but having the friends list We used to have the friends list as well as that. And it's about building relationships, right? So knowing that if you go all out for your clients and you put them first all the time, and you have created a true difference in their lives, there's nothing stopping you from calling up a client, and you call them your VIP clients, Jeanine. You could call a VIP client and fill a spot within an hour or two if you really wanted to. But you have to have built the relationship first, and it starts with making a difference in somebody's life and finding that magic. Because from there, anything's possible, and a business has organic growth.
Oh my God, I said 3, not 333. Maybe it's because of the way I said 3, you didn't understand, because Irish people dropped the H. Thought I said 3. Anyway.
I thought tree. How many branches does a tree have? I was like filling the branches.
Anyway, so you need this course, and the only way to get this course is to be a member of our inner circle. So what you need to do next is click the link below this podcast. That brings you to the application for our inner circle. Apply for the inner circle, and we are excited to see you on the calls in the community. It's an amazing community. Or go to thedifferencemakerrevolution.com/inner circle and apply today. The inner circle is an absolute game changer. It will help you to elevate your business to a new level and surround yourself with difference makers that want to celebrate your success and want to see you succeed. And we're excited to see you in the inner circle. So we'll see you on next week's call. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.